The 2 a.m. phone call itself wasn't the shock. It was my mother's voice, shrill with manufactured panic, claiming my sister was dying. My entire world shifted the moment I heard her lie, and I couldn't stop what was coming next. The harsh vibration of my phone jolted me awake, the glow of 2:17 a.m. accusingly bright against the dark. My mother's name flashed, and my stomach instantly twisted. Before I even answered, I knew. Her voice, thin and piercing, cut through the speaker. "She's dying, Olivia. Chloe is dying, and you need to send money now." I sat up slowly, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. "What are you talking about? Chloe collapsed at home. They rushed her to City General Hospital, and she needs emergency surgery. The doctors won't operate unless we pay $15,000 up front. If you don't wire it immediately, she'll be in agony all night, and we're going to make sure she knows you refuse to help. Every medical bill will have your name on it." The familiar manipulation, like poison, slithered through her words. I'd heard variations my whole life, but never at 2 a.m, and never with quite this level of desperation. "Call your precious daughter," I said, my voice flat. "The one you actually care about." I ended the call and silenced my phone. My hands trembled as I set it face down, but I forced myself to lie back down. Sleep wouldn't come easily. My dog, Spike, nudged my hand, his warmth keeping me from picking up as their calls came in 7 more times. Morning light was just filtering through my curtains when an unknown number finally broke through my do not disturb. I almost ignored it. "Is this Olivia Hayes?" a calm male voice asked. "Speaking. This is Detective Miller with the Denver Police Department. I need you to come down to the station regarding your family. There's been an incident." My blood ran cold. "What kind of incident?" "I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Can you come in this morning?" 3 hours later, I sat across from Detective Miller in a sterile interview room, smelling of burnt coffee and industrial cleaner. He slid a folder across the table. "Your sister, Chloe, was never at City General Hospital last night," he began. "She was arrested at 11:47 p.m. for attempting to use fraudulent credit cards at 3 different locations. Your parents were arrested at 3:15 a.m. for filing false police reports and harassment." I stared at him, numb. "I don't understand. Your sister has been running an elaborate credit fraud scheme for the past 8 months. She's opened 17 credit cards in various names, including yours. Your parents knew about it and have been helping her cover the charges." He pulled out printed statements. "They've been calling family members, claiming medical emergencies to collect money that goes straight to paying off these fraudulent accounts." The room tilted. "They used my information. Your credit score has dropped 140 points. You have $47,000 in fraudulent debt across multiple accounts." He pushed another document toward me. "This is just what we've found so far." I picked up the papers with numb fingers. Credit cards from stores I'd never shopped at. Cash advances I'd never taken. A car loan for a vehicle I'd never seen. Chloe's signature was a crude approximation of my own, but apparently, it was good enough to fool automated systems. "How long have you known about this?" Detective Miller asked. I didn't. "I haven't spoken to them in almost 2 years." The words felt distant, like someone else was speaking them. "Can you tell me why?" I leaned back in the uncomfortable plastic chair. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in a harsh, unforgiving light. "How much time do you have?" Detective Miller pulled out a notepad. "Start from the beginning. Growing up, favoritism wasn't subtle in our house. Chloe received new clothes, I got hand-me-downs from cousins. She attended private school, I went to the underfunded public one across town. Her bedroom was freshly painted every year in whatever color she wanted, mine kept the same dingy beige from when we moved in. She's sensitive, Mom would explain when I protested. She needs more support. What Chloe actually needed was accountability, but that never came. When she crashed Dad's car at 16, they bought her a newer one. When she got expelled from private school for cheating, they blamed the teachers. When she stole $3,000 from my college fund, they told me I was selfish for being upset. Family helps family, Dad had said, his face stone hard with disappointment in me. I worked 3 jobs to pay for community college. Chloe partied through a semester at an expensive university before dropping out. I saved for 5 years to buy a modest condo. Chloe moved back home, paid nothing, and worked sporadically at jobs she'd quit within months. 2 years ago, everything came to a head at Thanksgiving. I brought my partner, Leo, home to meet everyone. We'd been together for 3 years and were discussing marriage. I was nervous but hopeful this milestone might finally earn me some recognition. Chloe showed up 4 hours late, already intoxicated. She immediately started making comments about Leo's appearance, his job, his family. Mom laughed. Dad smiled indulgently. When I asked her to stop, Chloe turned her attention to me. She announced to the entire table that I'd always been jealous, bitter, small-minded. That Leo was clearly settling because who else would want someone as cold and calculating as me? I waited for someone to defend me. Anyone? Dad refilled Chloe's wine glass. Mom asked if anyone wanted more stuffing. Leo and I left before dinner was served. In the car, he held my hand and said gently, "You don't owe them anything." That night, I sent one final text to my parents, "I'm done. Don't contact me unless you're ready to apologize and treat me with basic respect." They responded with outrage, "How dare I be so dramatic? How could I abandon family over such a small thing? Chloe was just joking. I was always too sensitive." I blocked their numbers, blocked Chloe's, too. Changed my address to a P.O. box. Built a life that didn't include people who saw me as an ATM and an emotional punching bag. Until last night, I'd almost convinced myself I didn't care anymore. Detective Miller finished writing and looked up. "They've been escalating attempts to contact you." I wouldn't know. Everything was blocked. Your sister told us she needed the money to skip town. The credit card fraud was catching up to her, and she planned to disappear. Your parents were supposed to collect emergency funds from extended family to help her run. The absurdity of it struck me. They'd thrown away whatever remained of our relationship to help Chloe commit more crimes. Even now, even caught, they chose her. What happens next? I asked. Your sister is being charged with identity theft, credit fraud, and several related crimes. Your parents are looking at charges for conspiracy and filing false reports. You'll need to file police reports for the identity theft and work with the credit bureaus to clear the fraudulent accounts. He slid a business card across the table. This is Emily Davis. She specializes in these cases. She's very good. I took the card. Will any of them actually face consequences? Given the amount of fraud and the fact that it crossed state lines, yes, these are federal charges. Your sister is looking at significant prison time. Something should have broken inside me at those words. Shouldn't I feel guilt, sadness? Instead, I felt nothing but hollow exhaustion. Can I go? I asked. Yes. We'll be in touch as the case develops. And, Miss Hayes? He stood as I gathered my things. For what it's worth, you did the right thing last night. If you'd sent that money, you'd be implicated as an accomplice. The drive home passed in a blur. My phone, no longer silenced, showed 32 missed calls from various relatives. Aunt Brenda, Uncle George, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. The family gossip chain was working overtime. I sat in my parked car outside my building for 20 minutes before going inside. Leo was working from home, his face creasing with concern when he saw my expression. What happened? I told him everything. He listened without interrupting, his hand warm and steady on my knee. When I finished, we sat in silence. "Do you want to talk about it more?" he asked finally. "No. I want to pretend today never happened and eat leftover pizza for dinner." Done. But Emily Davis called the next morning, and pretending became impossible. She was sharp, efficient, and rightfully angry on my behalf. "This is one of the worst cases of familial fraud I've seen," she said during our first meeting. "They didn't even try to hide it. Your sister used her social security number on applications where she listed her own address. How do I fix it? We file disputes with every creditor, submit police reports, and document everything. It'll take months, but we'll get your credit cleared." She pulled out another stack of papers. "The harder question is whether you want to pursue civil damages against your own family, against people who stole your identity and destroyed your financial reputation." Emily's expression didn't change. "Family is just biology. It doesn't entitle anyone to victimize you." I signed the papers. The next 3 months unfolded like a bureaucratic nightmare. Endless phone calls with credit bureaus, affidavits notarized and mailed. Hours spent reconstructing my financial history to prove I wasn't responsible for charges I'd never made. Work became my sanctuary. My boss, Rachel, pulled me aside after noticing my distraction during a presentation. "Everything okay?" she asked, concern evident. I gave her the abbreviated version. Rachel listened carefully, then made a decision that surprised me. "Take next week off. Paid. You need time to handle this without worrying about quarterly reports." She held up a hand before I could protest. "It's not negotiable. I've seen employees try to power through identity theft cases. It never works. Handle your business." That kindness, coming from someone who technically owed me nothing, hit harder than I expected. I actually cried in her office, and immediately apologized. "Stop that," Rachel said firmly. "You're dealing with something traumatic. Crying is normal. Now go home early today." That's also not negotiable. Leo picked me up, took one look at my face, and drove straight to my favorite ice cream place. We sat in the parking lot eating directly from pint containers like teenagers. "Your boss sounds amazing," he said between bites. "She really is." I paused, spoon halfway to my mouth. "Is it wrong that strangers are treating me better than my own family ever did?" "It's not wrong," Leo said. "It's just sad that you're noticing the difference now." He set his ice cream down. "You've been conditioned to accept scraps and call it love. Actually, decent treatment feels disproportionate because you've never had a proper baseline." His words settled into my chest. Heavy, but true. I'd spent 30 years convincing myself that my family's treatment was normal, that every family had favorites, that I was overreacting to standard sibling dynamics. The credit bureau disputes required mountains of documentation. I spent entire days gathering bank statements, employment records, utility bills, anything proving I was somewhere other than where these purchases occurred. One credit card had been used in Arizona while I was verifiably at work in Denver. Another showed charges in Florida during a week I'd been hospitalized with pneumonia. Emily walked me through each dispute letter, her patience never wavering, even when I asked the same questions repeatedly. "This one says, I bought a jet ski," I said, staring at a statement in disbelief. "Who fraudulently buys a jet ski?" "Your sister, apparently." Emily made a note. "That one's actually helpful. Big-ticket items are easier to dispute because they require more documentation. A $47 charge at a gas station is harder to fight than a $12,000 recreational vehicle." "There's really $47,000 in total? That's confirmed so far?" "I suspect we'll find more as we dig deeper." She pulled something up on her computer. "Your sister wasn't sophisticated about this. She used her information but her own email addresses and phone numbers. When creditors tried to contact you about suspicious charges, she intercepted everything. My phone buzzed constantly during those weeks. Extended family members I hadn't heard from in years suddenly had opinions about my situation. Aunt Brenda called during lunch one Tuesday. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Olivia, honey, I really think you should reconsider pressing charges," she began, her tone saccharine. "Chloe made mistakes, but prison? That's so extreme. She stole my identity and ruined my credit for almost a year. But she's family. Families forgive each other. Your mother is beside herself with worry. This stress could literally kill her." Brenda's voice took on a manipulative edge I recognized from childhood. "Is that what you want? Your mother's death on your conscience?" Something inside me snapped. "Aunt Brenda, I need to be very clear about something. Chloe committed federal crimes, multiple felonies. I didn't press charges. The government did, once they discovered her fraud scheme. Even if I wanted to drop this, which I don't, I couldn't. This is out of my hands. You could refuse to cooperate with the investigation. No, I really couldn't. That would make me an accessory after the fact." I took a breath, forcing calm into my voice. "I'm going to say this once. I will not set myself on fire to keep Chloe warm. I will not destroy my own life to minimize consequences she earned through her own choices. If that makes me a bad daughter or a bad niece in your eyes, I can live with that." Brenda sputtered. "Your grandmother would be so disappointed in you. Grandma Helen knows everything and supports my decisions completely. If you're referring to Mom's mother who passed away, she told me once that Chloe was spoiled rotten and would end up in trouble. Looks like she was right." I hung up before Brenda could respond. My hands shook, but satisfaction warmed my chest. I'd never stood up to extended family before. It felt terrifyingly good. Emily called later that week with an update that made my stomach drop. "We found 6 more accounts. Your sister also took out a personal loan using your information. Total fraudulent debt is now at $61,000. The number was incomprehensible. I made decent money, but $61,000 represented years of careful saving. How did nobody catch this sooner?" She spread it across enough institutions that no single creditor saw the full picture. And she was making minimum payments on most accounts, so nothing went to collections immediately. Emily's anger bled through her professional tone. This was deliberate and calculated. She knew exactly what she was doing. Evidence continued mounting. Investigators found emails between Chloe and a woman named Harper, who'd apparently taught her various fraud techniques. Harper was already facing charges in another state for a similar operation. "Your sister isn't some naive kid who made a mistake," Detective Miller explained during one of our meetings. "She actively sought out information on how to commit identity theft. She joined online forums. She learned how to avoid detection. That revelation hurt more than the fraud itself. Chloe hadn't impulsively stolen my information in a desperate moment. She planned it, studied it, executed it methodically over months. My parents' involvement ran deeper than initially suspected, too. Text messages recovered from Mom's phone showed she'd been tracking which family members had money and would be susceptible to emergency fund requests. She'd made spreadsheets, ranking relatives by net worth and softness. Dad had driven Chloe to different banks to open fraudulent accounts, waiting in the car like a getaway driver. He coached her on what to say if anyone asked questions. The fantasy that maybe they'd been fooled by Chloe evaporated. They were partners in crime, literally. My extended family chose sides predictably. Aunt Brenda called me vindictive. Uncle George said I should have just sent the money and dealt with it privately. Cousins I barely knew left comments on social media about forgiveness and family loyalty. Cousin Melissa, who I'd been close with as children, sent a long message about how family was supposed to be forever, how blood was thicker than water, how I was being selfish and cruel. The message ended with, "I hope you can live with yourself when Chloe's children grow up without their mother." I stared at that last line for a long time. Chloe didn't have children. Melissa was creating fictional victims to manipulate me. I blocked her without responding. Uncle George took a different approach. He showed up at my workplace unannounced, demanding to speak with me. Security called my desk, and I had to explain to Rachel why my uncle was in the lobby causing a scene. "Want me to handle it?" she offered. "No, I should do this." I went downstairs, my heart hammering. George stood near the entrance, arms crossed, face red. "Finally. Do you have any idea what you're putting this family through?" "I'm not putting anyone through anything. Chloe committed crimes. She's facing consequences. She's your sister. You're supposed to protect each other." His voice rose, loud enough that people turned to stare. "She stole $61,000 from me using my identity. Where's her protection of me? Money can be replaced. You can rebuild credit. You can't get back the years she'll spend in prison because you were too stubborn to show mercy." The security guard stepped closer, sensing the situation escalating. I kept my voice level. "Uncle George, you need to leave. This is my workplace, and you're not welcome here. Your mother is falling apart. Your father can barely sleep. And you just sit here comfortable in your perfect little life while they suffer. They're suffering because of choices they made. Not me." I turned to security. "Please escort him out." George tried to argue, but security was firm. As they guided him toward the door, he shouted over his shoulder, "You're dead to this family. Do you hear me? Dead. Good." I called back, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. "That works for me." Rachel met me at the elevator. "You okay?" "Actually, yes. I really am." And I was. Something had shifted. Each confrontation made it clearer that these people had never truly valued me. They only cared now because I'd stopped being useful. Only my grandmother, Dad's mother, reached out with support. "Your father was always too soft on that girl," Grandma Helen said over lunch. "I told him years ago it would end badly. I'm sorry you got caught in it." "Did you know about the fraud?" "Not specifically, but I knew Chloe was in trouble with money. She called me last year asking for a loan to invest in a business opportunity. I told her no." Grandma Helen stirred her tea slowly. "Your parents enabled her. They're as responsible for this as she is. Everyone else thinks I should have helped. Everyone else is wrong." Her voice was firm. "You didn't cause this situation. You're just the only one with enough sense not to throw good money into a bottomless pit." As weeks passed, more details emerged that painted an even uglier picture. Chloe had been living well beyond any legitimate means for over a year. The apartment she rented cost $2,800 monthly, money that came entirely from fraudulent credit. She'd taken trips to San Diego, Nashville, and Boston, posting photos on social media while funding everything with stolen credit. I scrolled through her Instagram one sleepless night, Leo asleep beside me. Every post radiated carefree happiness, Chloe at beach clubs, in designer clothes, with friends at expensive restaurants. The comments were full of heart emojis and living your best life encouragement. Nobody questioned where the money came from. Or maybe they did and just didn't care. One photo stopped me cold. Chloe wearing a necklace I'd admired months before cutting contact, back when I'd still occasionally checked her social media. It cost $1,400. I knew because I'd added it to a wish list, saving up for it as a future birthday present to myself. She bought it with my stolen credit. The rage that flooded through me was white-hot and purifying. Every doubt I'd harbored about pursuing this case evaporated. She hadn't just stolen money. She'd stolen experiences I denied myself through fiscal responsibility. She'd worn my sacrifices around her neck while I worked overtime to save for things she bought on impulse. Emily filed additional civil suits. We can go after her for emotional distress, lost wages from time spent fixing this, and potential future damages if your credit impacts job opportunities or housing. Will we actually recover anything? Probably not much while she's incarcerated. But the judgments will follow her for decades. Every dollar she earns, every asset she acquires, we can go after it. Emily's smile held no warmth. She'll never financially recover from this. Consider it a long-term deterrent. The preliminary hearings were educational in the worst way. I learned legal terminology I'd never wanted to know: aggravated identity theft, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud. Each charge carried years of potential prison time. Chloe's public defender was young and overworked. She tried negotiating plea deals, but Chloe refused, insisting she'd done nothing wrong, that I'd given her permission to use my information. That lie was easily disproven. I hadn't spoken to her in 2 years. Text messages, call logs, email records, everything showed zero contact. Her lawyer tried a different angle: diminished capacity due to mental health issues. They brought in a psychologist who diagnosed Chloe with depression and anxiety, suggesting these conditions impaired her judgment. The prosecution countered with evidence of premeditation: forums Chloe had joined, searches on her computer for how to avoid credit fraud detection, messages where she bragged about her scheme to online acquaintances. Mental illness might explain poor decisions. It didn't explain months of calculated criminal activity. Leo attended hearings with me when his schedule allowed. His presence steadied me more than he probably realized. During one particularly difficult session where Chloe's lawyer painted me as vindictive and cruel, Leo squeezed my hand and whispered, "She's trying to get a reaction. Don't give her one." I kept my expression neutral while the lawyer suggested I was exaggerating damages, that I was using this situation to punish Chloe for childhood grievances, that family therapy would be more appropriate than prison. The prosecutor dismantled each argument methodically. This wasn't a family squabble. It was systematic fraud affecting multiple victims across state lines. Federal crimes didn't vanish because perpetrators shared DNA with their victims. Judge Davis seemed unmoved by the defense's appeals to familial mercy. Ms. Hayes committed serious crimes that require serious consequences, she stated firmly. The court acknowledges family relationships but cannot ignore the calculated nature of these offenses. Mom sobbed theatrically in the gallery during each hearing. Dad sat rigid, his face an expressionless mask. Neither looked at me. I was the enemy now, the traitor who'd chosen justice over family loyalty. Aunt Brenda attended one hearing, sitting in the back row with other family members I barely recognized. They whispered among themselves, shooting hostile glances my direction. I felt their judgment like physical weight. Grandma Helen attended that same hearing. She sat directly behind me, close enough that I could feel her support like a shield. When Aunt Brenda tried approaching during a recess, Grandma Helen intercepted. "Brenda, go sit down." "Mom, someone needs to talk sense into Olivia. She's tearing this family apart." Olivia is the only one showing sense. Chloe destroyed her own life. Olivia is just refusing to go down with the ship. Grandma Helen's voice carried a steel I'd rarely heard. "Now sit down or leave." Brenda retreated, and Grandma Helen settled back beside me. "Don't let them get in your head," she murmured. "They're desperate because they know they're wrong." The prosecution revealed evidence I hadn't known existed. Chloe had attempted to open credit cards using Grandma Helen's information, too, but the applications were denied due to credit freezes Grandma had implemented years ago. "She tried to steal from you?" I asked during lunch after that hearing. Grandma Helen nodded. "About 18 months ago, I received denial letters from credit card companies I'd never contacted. I froze my credit immediately and called your father to warn him. He told me I was being paranoid. She sipped her water. Turns out I wasn't paranoid enough. Why didn't you tell me? I'd already cut contact. I didn't want to drag you back into family drama. She paused. I regret that now. If I'd pushed harder, maybe you could have protected yourself sooner. This isn't your fault. And it's not yours either. Remember that when they try making you feel guilty. Financial impacts rippled through my life in unexpected ways. A loan application for a new car was initially denied due to my damaged credit, even with police reports attached. I had to bring Emily to the bank to explain the situation and provide legal documentation before they'd reconsider. My auto insurance rates increased because insurance companies check credit scores. The increase wasn't massive, but it stung, paying more for something because of crimes committed against me. I was denied an apartment upgrade because the landlord ran a credit check and saw the fraudulent accounts, even though I had documentation proving they weren't mine. The appeals process took 6 weeks and required legal intervention. This is why identity theft is so devastating, Emily explained. The criminal acts take hours or days. The cleanup takes years and affects aspects of your life you'd never anticipate. Each obstacle fueled my resolve. Chloe had casually destroyed my financial stability for shopping sprees and vacations. The magnitude of her selfishness was staggering. Leo proposed during this chaos, which should have felt like bad timing, but somehow felt perfect. We were in our living room, nothing fancy or orchestrated. He'd come home to find me crying over another denied credit application. "Marry me," he said suddenly. I looked up, confused. What? Marry me. Not because of this mess, but in spite of it. Because watching you handle this with grace and strength makes me more certain than ever that I want to spend my life with you. He pulled out the ring he'd apparently been carrying for weeks. You deserve someone who sees your worth. I see it. I've always seen it. I said yes through tears. But these were good tears, healing tears. Someone saw me, really saw me, and chose me deliberately. Not out of obligation or biology, but genuine love. Planning a wedding while dealing with fraud investigations was surreal. I'd research venues in the morning and dispute fraudulent charges in the afternoon. Leo's family embraced me immediately, which highlighted everything my biological family had never been. His mother, Maria, took me dress shopping and cried when I found the perfect one. "You're going to be such a beautiful bride," she said, hugging me tightly. "I'm so glad Leo found you." That simple acceptance, given freely without conditions, cracked something open inside me. I cried in the dressing room, and Maria helped me while I explained about my family situation. "Their loss is our gain," she said firmly. "You're ours now, and we don't let go of our people." Leo's father, David, walked me through basic car maintenance one Saturday, teaching me things Dad had never bothered with. "Every woman should know how to change a tire and check her oil," he said. "Can't rely on anyone else to take care of you." His younger sister, Sophia, invited me to her book club and introduced me as her future sister-in-law with genuine excitement. These people barely knew me, but welcomed me unreservedly. The contrast was devastating and liberating simultaneously. I'd normalized emotional neglect for so long that basic kindness felt overwhelming. Therapy became necessary. Emily recommended Dr. Evelyn Reed, a counselor specializing in family trauma and betrayal. Dr. Reed had kind eyes and a straightforward manner that I appreciated. "You're grieving," she told me during our first session. "You're mourning the family you should have had and accepting the reality of what you actually had. That's complicated grief, and it's completely valid." "I feel guilty for not feeling guiltier," I admitted. "Shouldn't I be devastated that my sister is going to prison?" "You're devastated by what she did to you." "That's appropriate." Dr. Reed leaned forward slightly. "Guilt is what we feel when we've done something wrong. What have you done wrong in this situation?" I couldn't answer. Logically, I knew I hadn't caused any of this. Emotionally, the conditioning ran deeper. Your family trained you to feel responsible for their feelings and their choices, Dr. Reed continued. They trained you to prioritize their comfort over your own well-being. Unlearning that takes time and conscious effort. Sessions with Dr. Reed became anchors during the chaos. She helped me separate normal family loyalty from the toxic version I'd been raised with. She taught me that boundaries weren't punishments, but necessary protections. People who respect boundaries don't need them enforced harshly, she explained. It's the people who push and violate and manipulate who make boundaries seem cruel. But the cruelty is in the refusal to respect your autonomy, not in your need to protect yourself. These concepts seemed obvious in her office but were harder to internalize when Aunt Brenda left voicemails calling me heartless, when Cousin Melissa posted vague social media updates about family betrayal, when Uncle George sent emails with subject lines like "blood is thicker than water." The trial moved faster than expected. Chloe's public defender tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the prosecution had too much evidence: 17 credit cards, dozens of fraudulent purchases, multiple victims beyond just me. The prosecution also revealed that I wasn't Chloe's only victim outside our family. She'd stolen information from 2 former roommates, a coworker, and a woman she'd met at a gym. Each testified about the financial devastation Chloe had caused. One woman, Natalie, described discovering fraudulent accounts weeks before her wedding. The stress had caused such anxiety that she postponed the wedding. Another victim, Daniel, learned about the fraud when trying to buy his first house. The mortgage was denied due to debt he didn't know existed. By the time everything was sorted out, interest rates had increased, and he could no longer afford the property. Listening to their testimonies was gutting. Chloe hadn't just targeted family. She'd victimized anyone she could access. The crimes weren't crimes of desperation. They were crimes of opportunity and entitlement. During cross-examination, Chloe's lawyer tried suggesting these victims had somehow contributed to the theft by not securing their information adequately. The prosecutor shut that down immediately. Victim blaming has no place in this courtroom, Judge Davis stated firmly. The only person responsible for identity theft is the person who steals identities. Chloe herself never took the stand. Her lawyer advised against it, probably knowing that Chloe's entitled attitude would alienate the jury further. Instead, they called character witnesses who described Chloe as kind and generous, someone who'd help anyone in need. The prosecution countered by asking these witnesses if they'd ever loaned Chloe money. Most had. When asked if Chloe had repaid those loans, every single person answered no. So, Miss Hayes has a pattern of taking financial advantage of people who care about her? The prosecutor asked. Objections were raised and sustained, but the point landed. The jury had seen the pattern clearly demonstrated. My parents' trial ran parallel to Chloe's, and their defense strategy was equally flimsy. They claimed they genuinely believed Chloe was in medical danger, that they were acting as concerned parents trying to help their daughter in crisis. The text messages told a different story. Messages where mom joked about which relatives were soft touches. Messages where dad discussed driving Chloe to banks. Messages where they coordinated stories about medical emergencies that never happened. These aren't the actions of deceived parents, the prosecutor argued. These are co-conspirators actively participating in fraud. Mom cried throughout her testimony, painting herself as a mother who had been manipulated by her troubled daughter. The jury didn't appear moved. Dad maintained he'd just been supporting his wife and daughter, that he hadn't understood the full scope of what was happening. Phone records showed he'd made calls to credit card companies pretending to be me, verifying account information so Chloe could answer security questions. That wasn't unknowing support. That was active participation. Both were found guilty on multiple counts. Sentencing day arrived with surprising speed. I wore a professional Navy suit, wanting to project calm competence rather than emotional vulnerability. Leo sat beside me, his hand warm in mine. Grandma Helen sat in the row behind us. Maria and David came too, flanking Grandma Helen in a show of support that meant everything. My parents hired a lawyer who argued they were manipulated by Chloe, that they truly believed she was in medical danger that night. The jury didn't buy it. Text messages between Mom and Chloe showed they coordinated the emergency story together, workshopping which medical crisis would sound most urgent. I attended Chloe's sentencing hearing. Emily advised against it, but I needed to see it through. Chloe wore an ill-fitting suit that made her look younger than her 31 years. She didn't look at me when the judge read her sentence: 8 years in federal prison, restitution, probation. Mom sobbed loudly in the gallery. Dad sat stone-faced. My parents received 18 months each for their role, though they'd likely serve less with good behavior. The judge addressed Chloe directly. You didn't just commit fraud. You betrayed family bonds and destroyed your sister's financial stability. That kind of violation runs deeper than stolen money. Chloe's lawyer requested permission for her to make a statement. The judge allowed it. My sister finally looked at me. Her eyes were red-rimmed but dry. I never meant for it to go this far. I just needed help, and nobody else would give it to me. You always had everything together, and I thought you could spare it. The words landed wrong, even as an apology. She still saw herself as the victim of my success, rather than the architect of her own destruction. No acknowledgement of the lives she damaged. No recognition that needing help didn't justify destroying others. Miss Hayes, Judge Davis said, her tone sharp. You had numerous opportunities to seek legitimate help. Employment resources, social services, family members who would have assisted you legally. Instead, you chose to commit serious federal crimes. That was a choice, not a circumstance. Chloe's face flushed red, but she stayed silent. Judge Davis turned to me. Miss Olivia Hayes, would you like to address the court? Emily had prepared me for this possibility. Stand up. Keep it brief. Don't let emotion override the facts. I rose slowly. My sister didn't just steal my credit. She stole years of my life that I'll spend repairing damage I didn't cause. My parents taught her that family loyalty meant enabling her worst impulses. I hope prison gives her time to understand that real family doesn't exploit each other. I paused, making myself look directly at Chloe. I want to be clear about something. I didn't put you here. Your choices did. Every fraudulent account you opened, every purchase you made with stolen credit, every lie you told, those were your decisions. I simply refused to pretend they didn't happen. My voice stayed steady throughout. No tears, no anger, just factual statements about consequences earned through deliberate actions. I sat back down. Leo's arm came around my shoulders immediately. Judge Davis nodded. Well said. Court is adjourned. Chloe was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs. Mom tried to approach me in the hallway, but Emily intercepted smoothly. My client has nothing to say to you. She's my daughter. Mom's voice cracked, mascara running down her face in dark streaks. Then you should have treated her like one, Emily replied and guided me toward the exit. Dad stood near the courthouse steps, smoking a cigarette despite the no-smoking signs. He watched us emerge but made no move to approach. Our eyes met briefly. I saw no remorse there, just exhaustion and resentment. I looked away first, not out of shame, but simple disinterest. He was a stranger now, connected to me only through biological accident and legal paperwork. Outside the courthouse, the early spring sun warmed my face. The air smelled like rain and fresh starts. How do you feel? Emily asked. Tired. Relieved. Guilty for feeling relieved. That's normal. You're allowed to feel multiple things at once. She handed me a final folder. This is everything you need going forward. Most creditors have already removed the fraudulent accounts. Your credit score should recover within 6 months. The restitution order means you'll eventually be compensated, though I wouldn't expect much. I don't want their money. Good, because you probably won't see it anyway. She smiled slightly. Take care of yourself, Olivia. You survived something that destroys a lot of people. Leo took me to dinner at my favorite restaurant. We didn't talk about the trial or my family. We discussed normal things, upcoming vacation plans, renovations for the kitchen, whether we should adopt a dog. Over dessert, he pulled out a small box. Inside was a simple silver ring with a tiny diamond. I know the timing is weird, he said. But these past months showed me what I already knew. You're the strongest person I've ever met, and I want to spend my life with someone who doesn't let circumstances break her. Will you marry me? I said yes through happy tears, the first I'd shed since this whole nightmare began. We married 6 months later in a small ceremony. Grandma Helen attended, along with a handful of friends and Leo's large, chaotic, loving family. His mother hugged me tightly before the ceremony and whispered, "Welcome home." 3 years have passed since that 2 a.m. phone call. My credit score fully recovered. I got promoted twice at work. Leo and I bought a house with an actual yard for the dog we eventually adopted. Chloe writes occasionally from prison. Her letters are strange attempts at connection that never quite acknowledge what she did. I don't respond. Maybe I will someday, but not yet. My parents were released after 14 months. They moved to Georgia to be closer to Mom's sister. Dad sent a Christmas card last year with a generic "Hope you're well" message. No apology, no acknowledgement. I threw it away. Grandma Helen comes over for dinner every Sunday. She's teaching me her recipes and telling stories about family members I never knew. We're building something new from the salvageable pieces of the old. Some relatives still think I'm cold for abandoning family when they needed me most. They don't understand that family isn't an obligation to accept mistreatment. Real family builds you up rather than tearing you down for spare parts. That phone call at 2 a.m. was supposed to be my moment of guilt. The crisis that would finally force me back into their dysfunction. They gambled on my compassion overriding my boundaries. They lost. And I finally won by refusing to play their game anymore. The life I have now, full of people who value me for who I am rather than what I can provide, is worth more than any forced reconciliation could ever be. Sometimes Leo asks if I regret how things turned out. I tell him the truth, I regret that it was necessary, but I don't regret choosing myself. The police station called that morning thinking they were delivering bad news. Instead, they gave me confirmation that walking away 2 years ago was the right choice. My family taught me that loyalty was supposed to hurt, that love meant endless sacrifice without reciprocation. They were wrong. The people who truly love me prove that family can be chosen, built deliberately for mutual respect and genuine care. I sleep well at night now. My phone stays silenced, but from peace rather than defense. When unknown numbers call, I don't automatically panic. And if another emergency ever comes at 2 a.m., I have people who would actually be in the hospital. People I'd help without hesitation because they've earned that trust through years of showing up for me. That's the real revenge, building a life so full of authentic love that their absence becomes invisible. They thought cutting me off from family would devastate me. What would you have done if your family had betrayed you like this?